What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? Get out your tinfoil because we're making some hats. It is our conspiracy theory episode.
Woo, woo. And I really wish we did have some tinfoil hats. That would have made this absolutely perfect.
That would've.
I literally just thought of that at this moment, but
Man, because we could probably dig some up around here.
I'm sure we could find some.
Yeah.
We're excited here today because last episode we talked about media literacy. Very important stuff, but definitely not as funny.
No,
as,
I mean,
and hilarious, just like crazy as conspiracy theories. Like there's some weird stuff out there. There's some weird people, and you are weird if you believe any of these things. And you will die on that hill. I'm going to die on that hill by saying that you're going to die. If you die on that hill, you're fucking weird. All right. It's okay to appreciate a conspiracy theory and be like, oh, was it actually a thing? And just kind of joke about it.
Right.
But don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
I
just
think,
derailed everything. All right.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I was just thinking because we were at the bar the other day, for Addie's birthday, Taylor's wife's birthday, and one of your guys' friends that I had just met for the first time.
Oh yeah, Sam.
Yeah, he's a middle school teacher, and he's fucking hilarious. But
yeah, he's awesome.
He's like, he sits down and he's like, how do you guys feel about conspiracy theories? And I'm like, fuck. And he's like, there's this one where like we don't know who's buying all the world's glitter. Right. And I'm like, oh, this is the kind of conspiracy theory. I'm like, all right, buddy, I can get on board. And then like Taylor and I immediately got on our phones and like went down a 20-minute rabbit hole. And it's fucking true.
Yeah.
Like it's a real conspiracy that like the biggest glitter company in the world, I don't know, Glitter X or something.
Yeah, I don't even know who is the biggest manufacturer of glitter.
Their largest client, they will not disclose who it is. And so there's like tons of theories about like who's buying all the glitter and why. And we could not find like a legitimate answer for it.
And I go to the same, me and Sam and my wife, we all kind of go to the same gym. And about this week, we were just kind of waiting for our wife's family friend, whatever, to get out of the locker room, and we were standing there, and he asked me, he was like, hey, did you guys find anything more about the glitter stuff? And I was like, no, I couldn't find anything. But I was like, you know what? Like, it kind of feels like a psyop. Like, they're purposefully making it seem like there's a mysterious buyer to promote the glitter industry. That's my conspiracy. There is no conspiracy. The conspiracy is the creation of the conspiracy. So
Inception.
That's my take on the glitter conspiracy.
I love that
there
you
is
took
no
it
glitter
to the next
conspiracy.
level with that. Like,
they made their own conspiracy to make it seem like glitter is in demand, and you better get some of that glitter.
It is crazy. I think the only one that sort of made sense to me was the military, because like there was some like boat manufacturers, because people who buy bass boats really like shiny things, so they make them.
They're like the fishes that they fish.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like woo,
shiny squirrel.
So like that would make sense, but it's like, why would they cover that up? Like that seems like a proudly like Bass Tracker buys more glitter than anybody, you know? Like that seems like something.
Yeah, my first thought was like strip clubs or like stripper or like body whatever
spray,
body oil or body cream, whatever, the glitter cream, whatever. That was
crazy glue, or what? Not crazy glue. What's the like art glue that's all full of glitter?
I was like Elmer's glue or whatever, like.
But I'm like, none of those would be like trying to cover that up. So the thing that like sort of does make sense is the military, just because like if they're using it in something, they'd be not wanting like if it's somehow used in explosives, glitter bomb, it's
Except the only thing that I can think of that doesn't make sense is because the military would have their own glitter. Like they would have a special glitter that costs like 100 times more than regular glitter.
They might. That might be
I don't
another
think
reason
they'd
why
buy. I don't think they'd buy consumer grade glitter. They'd have military grade glitter.
It might be military grade glitter, but they still subcontract all that shit out to be made. So it's still private companies. I mean, it's not like
it's a sub.
Lockheed Martin still makes fighter is a plausible conspiracy theory. So before we get too deep into it, we will talk about what makes a conspiracy theory plausible or not. But let's talk about what are some of your favorite, either ridiculous or real conspiracy theories? Like what are your favorites?
Well, okay, so one of my personal favorites is the moon landing
Yo.
because I love space and I
Okay.
love like the
Mhm.
people always talk about like the ISS, like they're not
Uh-huh.
actually there. They're just like filming stuff and wearing harnesses and like they're not actually in space. I think that's absolutely hilarious. I love it that people hate that think that. I think it's it's bonkers.
It
It's
is.
fucking bonkers.
It is.
An actual harmful conspiracy theory is that the Holocaust never
Wasn't
happened or was
real?
greatly exaggerated.
Yeah.
That was pretty harmful. Moon landing, not so much.
Yeah, the moon landing one is just like wow, you're dumb. I will say, the moon landing being faked, was one that I actually bought into for a long time when I was a kid.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
I saw some,
Oh,
man,
man.
talking about media literacy, but this
Yeah.
was like, I mean, I was young and it was on television.
Right. Yeah, sure.
And I feel like it was on like PBS or some shit. Like
Oh, no.
it seemed, and I could be. I was
Right.
young. I could very well be misremembering it. I was probably 12 because that's when everything happened in my life,
Mhm.
as far as I remember. But yeah, they're like, oh, this rock in this picture has like a little like marking on a studio marking, but then in this picture it doesn't. And then like now I'm an adult and I've like gone back into it. And I kind of feel like dumb for believing it for as long as I did.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it was probably a hair on the negative or something. You know, like there's a lot of like
Yeah.
dumb shit. But
Also,
it
like
was an impressionable time for me.
like the multiple international organizations and governments that have been like, yeah, we've been there too.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
The fact that you can shoot lasers at the reflectors
Right.
that the like Apollo mission put on the moon.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough one. I loved the flat earther ones.
Oh my
It's
God. I
very.
mean-
my wife and I were we're really into documentaries and especially about like cults or like conspiracy theories. Like we go deep. And we watched all of them. And we watched a flat earther one, and we were just like, how is this possible that you think that you believe this? we couldn't fathom the idea. It was such an entertaining documentary. Fucking insane, but incredibly entertaining.
Oh, talking about Chris. Chris is our pilot friend. If you've been watching, listening to the show for a while, he was on the first couple episodes. Well, not the very first, but
Like the first
quite a few of the
3 out of 5. Like
yeah,
he's in there.
definitely quite a few of the early ones. And he's a pilot now, a commercial airline pilot, and he's talked about how people have like asked other professional pilots, like, hey, is the Earth round, man? Can you like actually like see the curvature of the Earth and shit? Like,
Right.
and I could be lying. I could be completely misremembering this, but I feel like he has a pilot, or he knows a pilot or met a pilot that is a flat earther as well, which is really
That is
bonkers.
bizarre.
Bonkers. 'Cause, like, you know, navigation, I feel like
Right.
kind of depends on the Earth being
Also,
not flat.
right? I mean, they can come up with a rationalization for everything, right? They're like, oh, satellites only go around in a circle. They don't go around a globe, right? So that's how we have GPS. And it's like, that's literally impossible if you like know anything about the laws of gravity and like physics.
And also, like they admit that other planets are round. But they think that like Earth's flying through space like a fucking frisbee, but like Mars is round. Yeah, we can see that Mars is round. Obviously, have you looked at it? But Earth.
I haven't seen that part of it.
Oh my god. Oh, and do you remember that fucking dude who like built a steam powered rocket to prove that the Earth was flat?
A steam powered rocket?
Yeah. So this flat earther, for years he was like the foremost flat earther, and he was building rockets powered by steam because apparently it's 1865, and
Or the 21st century, if we're going back to our green energy topic.
Well, it's how you
nuclear
how you
nuclear steam energy, baby.
yeah, I don't think he was using nukes to
No,
produce
probably
that
not.
steam. So and these rockets actually flew, and he was riding in them because he's trying to get up high enough to prove that the Earth was flat. Like that was his whole thing. He's like, he's gonna build a rocket to get up high enough to take a picture to prove that the Earth was flat. right? And like,
He's
and
gonna
there's,
get
this is a real thing. Like, totally fucking Google it. A real fucking thing that a human being did. Like, he doesn't know that balloons exist, apparently.
right hot air balloons.
Like, you could strap a camera to a weather balloon, man, and
Sure.
and
Go-
get your picture.
Go full Chinese spy balloon.
Right,
you know?
exactly. Or like buy a ticket on an airplane. That seems like a much more economical way
Right.
than fucking building a steam rocket.
Yeah.
And then Darwin won.
Oh.
I don't even feel bad. Like the dude built, like, you're smart enough to build a functional rocket from steam, and you think the Earth is flat, and then you die
I mean,
because you launched yourself.
I guess I feel as bad about that as I do as maybe even less than like a puppy getting run over by a car. You know, like I feel more for the puppy
Oh
than
my
that
god,
person.
I feel way more for the mine. I would feel horrible about
But
a
like
puppy getting.
shit like that happens. Like animals die all the time. Like it's like a thing that you can't really control.
Yeah, but you feel bad.
Oh right, no, I do.
The puppy didn't know any better. Fucking.
Well, he obviously didn't know better enough to not do that thing. You know,
just like every
he's just chasing the ball that is flat Earth. Okay.
Oh man, I still can't
so,
wrap my head around.
yeah,
Like fucking weather balloon man would have like solved all your problems.
We're gonna have some fun with this episode, but we are gonna talk about some serious stuff that does have actual ramifications on our society.
Yeah,
probably.
Not all conspiracies are fake. There is definitely some real conspiracies out there.
Yeah, of course. There's
a lot of real conspiracies out there, and this is why we did the media literacy thing. I think this is why I want to talk before we get too deep into this about how you identify. Or did you want to end with that?
No, yeah.
Okay, yeah, just how you identify whether your conspiracy is plausible, because like obviously part of a conspiracy, if it hasn't been confirmed, is that like, you know, is this happening? Like there's reason to believe that this might be happening, but we haven't blown it wide open yet, you know, haven't quite gotten it all the way deep in the throat yet.
Right, you hear it and you're like, really? Is that actually true? The first thing you should think of is motive.
Yeah.
Right? And why the fuck would anybody want to convince you that like the world is flat or the moon landing was fake?
Yeah.
How does it serve that person or that group?
Right.
If
and the flat Earth one, I still have not heard.
No,
like I've even talked to real flat Earthers, and I still
you've talked. I've never met a real flat
Earther. I did a radio episode, which really I felt like more of a podcast, but apparently it's radio. I don't know what the fuck it was, but whatever. I did an interview with a podcasty feeling.
So worldly, man.
Huh?
You're so worldly.
I know, right? And after I was talking to one of the hosts, and he's a legit flat earther, and then so like I talked to him for a long time, and like I genuinely, and I went through the list of the things that we're gonna go through about whether it's plausible, and some people are unreachable.
Right.
But like I was like, what's the motive? And like the motive he came up with was like they're trying to hide like resources from us or something. And I'm like, who are they? And he's like, you know, the elite people. And I'm like,
the elites.
I feel like that's broad. They,
it's a pretty common scapegoat.
Yeah,
many conspiracies blame the elites.
They,
which is like, to an extent, like I get why it's the go-to, like because literally they I just did it, just did the thing. Powers that people that have power, corporations that have power, have manipulated things that do exist in the world.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. But
so it's understandable.
You need to be able to pick out the elite, not they elite, the elite person or group doing it. So they is not good enough. I'm sorry. Like if you can't be this person or this organization specifically, you're off to a real bad start.
Right. I mean, if you go to like a serious like conspiracy, not even really a conspiracy, but just like a hidden thing about like the like bananas in Latin America,
Yeah.
and that they like overthrew a government to maintain
Mhm.
their control over the banana
Yeah.
like supply in like the 1900s,
Mhm.
and they used the CIA to help do that. Like that's a real conspiracy
Mhm.
that a U.S. corporation worked with the CIA to fund and basically take over the like banana supply for America.
Is that where the term Banana Republic comes
Yes,
from?
yes, it is.
No fucking way,
Yes.
man.
Yeah, because the Banana Corporation basically took control of the government.
How did I not know this?
Is it Honduras, or Guatemala? We fucked with all of them, so
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't really
mean-
matter. But like, that's a real thing, and that is where the Banana Republic comes from.
Dude, I
Like
did
shit like that.
not know that. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense, but yeah, so like that's a specific thing. The one that I always go to because people are familiar with it and it's easy. So I always like compare conspiracies to Watergate because Watergate is a very straightforward conspiracy. We know it happened.
Right.
We know how it
And it's
happened.
very small scale, right? Like
It
it's
is.
easy to fully encapsulate that
Yeah,
in your
wrap
mind,
your head around.
right?
But that's so like there we had the they was the president and his administration. That
Yeah.
was an easy one. We picked the elite person
Mm-hmm.
and their motive. We knew what the motive was. He was a paranoid motherfucker who, despite being way ahead in the polls, was
Right.
like, I might lose, so I need to break into the Democratic headquarters
To
and
steal
steal
all
stuff.
their information about how they're trying to beat me, even though I'm definitely winning right now.
So like there you go. Do you have motive? Again, with like with the flat Earth or a global warming hoax, climate change
Right.
hoax thing, like where is the motive? And if it's big green energy or some shit, or
Right.
every scientist on the planet is afraid of losing funding from. Again, who's the motive? Who's gonna pull the funding for them pushing this? You gotta follow that motive down. So like, compare that. If there's not a fairly clear cut motive, people are not real complex beings. Like, if there's not.
We follow the path of least resistance, like almost to a T, like
Yep.
almost every time.
Yep. So if there's not a real clear cut motive, you're already your conspiracy theory is already dead in the water. But like,
Right. That's the first step.
the moon landing, like I've heard the general motive is we were in the space race
Right.
with
The space
Russia,
race, Cold War. Yeah.
and we did a lot of shit
Oh
to
my gosh.
to just dick swing on the Soviet Union.
Man.
I could see that being a legit motive.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go to the next step, which is how many fucking people is it going to take to pull this off?
Right.
In the case of like the climate change hoax, you would need the entire world, and that's a lot of people to coordinate. Like, I don't know if you were a project manager.
I am a project manager.
You are a project manager. How does managing projects go with multiple people?
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
If they're not like perfectly in sync, like 2-3 people, it can be a bit of a cluster.
Yeah. Now, do you
trying
think,
to do a small task.
Do you think that you could get all of the world scientists from all of the world's countries who speak different languages and have different ideologies?
Right. My first question would be, how am I going to communicate with all these people? Even if I have translator, what method of communication? And like there's like a whole like thing that I would have to like create in order to even just begin the plot.
Yeah.
Not even to perpetuate it, but just to start it.
Yep.
Like it's that would take a lot of effort.
A lot of effort. And then you would have to have all of those people keep it a secret.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is-
Yeah. Exactly. Then to perpetuate that idea, like
There's an old saying that the only way two people can keep a secret is if one of them's dead.
right. Yeah.
So literally millions of people around the world, you're not gonna keep that secret.
Right.
Like,
Or
there's
even thousands, really. Like,
hundreds would be is doable in the
Right,
right circumstances.
but like
Um,
less than 10 would be like
Yeah.
under 100 is maybe my margin.
Right.
Even then, like it feels like 20 maybe.
And so there is a little bit of nuance to that. So like government conspiracies,
Sure.
with like the CIA operations in Central,
Right.
like so there's a small amount of people who actually know what's going on,
Right.
but then like a lot of the people doing the conspiracy stuff
Right.
don't have any fucking idea, right? And so there is
Right.
that little bit of nuance
Or-
where you can kind of extend. But a
that's
lot
I
of
feel
times, that's
like
how those conspiracies get blown open. Is the guy who didn't have all of the information, like, mentioned something, and somebody's like, it doesn't quite add up, and then they blow it
I
open.
also feel like it's a difference when it's a government conspiracy versus like a military specific
Right.
conspiracy,
Yeah,
because like the military and CIA, FBI, like they are secretive in by
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
University, professors are not
Yeah.
secretive by nature.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
like it's a completely different
Uh-huh.
group of people in
Yeah.
a group of the way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have all of those systems in place for scientists and stuff to keep them from like,
Right.
oh, you spill this information and you're going to
Well, and that's why there's
Guantanamo.
contrarian climate scientists
Mm-hmm.
today, because they think they can make money or do better as a
Mm-hmm.
scientist by being contrarian
Mm-hmm.
to the global
Yeah,
thought.
all like 4 of them out there
Right.
in the world,
But yeah, like they show up on all the conservative, like media, being like,
uh,
it's not real. It's
uh,
it's not
but
based in facts.
but again, now tying it back to Watergate. Watergate had a small group of people. I
Right.
mean, it was the president and a few close officials that did that. So, and they couldn't even keep it a fucking secret.
Right, it was
Like
like
that.
what, 20 people
Yeah,
maybe? Like
something like that. It was very
a
low.
dozen
It was
people?
a small amount of people.
Yeah.
Who should have been good at keeping secrets, and they still didn't manage to pull it off. So if
Right.
they couldn't pull off Watergate, they're not pulling off flat Earth. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's just not gonna happen. So then the third one would be resources.
Right. Right.
So let's say that there is the ability to have a conspiracy controlled by a small enough group of people where it's plausible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You still need the resources to do it. It takes money.
Right.
It takes people with the right qualifications. And
I have a set of skills.
Yeah.
I will find you, and you will regret it.
But if you you need infrastructure for a lot of these things, especially like if you were keeping like the Earth is flat a secret, or like climate science, that takes a lot of infrastructure.
Right. Or like on the flip side of like conspiracy theories, like Area 51,
Yeah.
where it's like there's a certain number of people that are in the military that are on that
Mhm.
base, certainly.
Mhm.
But like the military, like I said, they generally have a much better like clamp down on
Mhm.
information. It's only until like 40 years later do we find out like
Right.
we purposefully like napalmed like half of Vietnam that we
Mhm.
knew were not like Viet Cong,
Like,
whatever.
most of the people are dead who could go to prison for this.
Right,
So we'll
yeah.
we'll declassify.
or they're
it
like
now.
80 already,
Yeah.
like they're gonna die in less than 5 years.
Uh-huh.
So like
Um,
I don't know if that what Area 51 passes the motive check, other than like they want like the
they're worried about
government's-
mass hysteria, or they're trying to
Right.
keep the technology secret from our enemies or something.
Right,
Like, yeah,
but-
you could pass the motive check on that. I think. You
Maybe the number of people, probably
it
not.
would be hard for this long.
Yeah,
I
for
feel
this
like.
long, I would agree. But like they have the resources, like the
yeah.
U.S. military absolutely could have the
has the
resources.
resources to do that. Yeah, they've got a blank fucking check. So
Right, and we don't even know where most of their money goes to
Right,
because they
the-
can't pass an audit, much less like anything else accounting wise.
But like most of these like massive conspiracies, like even the COVID conspiracy, the flat Earth conspiracy, the global warming conspiracy, would require resources that pretty much no government or corporation.
Not one
or-
single, right? And you
Right.
need all of them if they're going to work together on a global
Right.
scale.
To pull that off. Like it's just physically not possible on a money scale, on a human scale.
Right.
But then if they do have the resources, is it the most practical way to tie it back to the beginning to achieve that motive using those resources? Like if
Yeah.
your goal is I'm drawing a blank on a good example of this.
I mean,
Like
that's where Area 51 doesn't make sense. Like,
Right.
what's the, what would be your goal to be like, other than like trying to reduce mass hysteria? Like, if
right, or again hiding the technology, if we're trying to reverse engineer alien
Right, like-
technology or something.
and that's where it's like,
I get that.
it doesn't make
Uh,
sense for like corporations to like,
Flat Earth again. If the motive is really just hiding a special place where there's like resources that only like a few people want to access, convincing everybody in the world that it's not an actual world is not probably the most practical way to use the massive resources that would be required to do that. And again, I don't think that
There's
there
an
is
easier
enough
way to
resources.
control people.
Right. You could put a fence around it. You could label it as,
Government property. Do
yeah,
not enter.
exactly. Like there's lots of places that governments keep us out of just fine. Area 51, for example,
Right.
that they don't need to convince us that the world is flat for.
No.
So again, if it passes all of those and there is a more practical solution to get to the same goal, yeah, it's that then it makes no sense. Like they're not going to do that. Rich people do not like giving away their money. I
No.
mean, governments will throw away money on a lot of dumb shit, but still, path of least resistance. We were talking about at the
Right.
beginning.
Yeah.
They're going to take the path of least resistance, and I will tell you that convincing everybody who went to school and got PhDs in science to lie about the world being flat when this is obviously their life's passion and work.
Right.
And
Across generations.
yeah,
Like
and
it's very tough.
I guess make us all forget when we fly in airplanes that there's a curvature to the world and stuff. Like that,
Right.
it's not a practical solution, when there's easier ways to do that.
See, the Flat Earth documentary that we watched, they didn't have some dude building a rocket. They had some dude, like, they put a laser pointer on, like, a stand, like, 10 feet up above the ground, and they were like, if the Earth's flat, then this should reach, like, a certain distance, and it should be the same level.
Yeah.
And they tested it, and it's like, oh, it's not there. This is weird. I wasn't expecting this result. And they were like, oh, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and do more math. And we were like, oh no, how does that not just blow your mind? And then you just like, at least in that moment, be like, boy, maybe I'm wrong. But no, they're like, nope,
Committed.
I just didn't do the calculations
Yeah.
right.
That's special. All right. So what makes
So-
a conspiracy theory?
I mean, yeah, a conspiracy theory is essentially is an attempt to explain an event or situation that basically you assert that the existence of a conspiracy of like a group or powerful group, organization, government, they in order to retain power or political power or just like push people to believe something when there's easier explanations available
Yeah.
that don't require a conspiracy
Yeah.
to have it happen.
Well, and I guess because again, there are legitimate conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah, I think we could go through all of the. Like, I got a bunch of them on here, and we can go through all like four of the criteria of how should we basically evaluate this, and we could probably go a couple of them. Say like there's a decent chance of each of these happening based off these reasons, but most of them are no. You can't pass that check, and it just doesn't make sense. Occam's razor, the simplest answer, will likely be the answer. It's a Occam's law. It's for a reason, and that's why conspiracy theories are kind of it's like a pet project, like they have at home. It's not something you like are gonna end up doing anything with, but you're just really interested in it.
Yeah.
Or you shouldn't do anything with it.
No, I agree. Yeah. 9/11 was an inside job one. I think that's a good one that was.
Yeah, that's starting to get into more of the harmful conspiracy theories
Absolutely.
for sure.
And that was one I was definitely skeptical about for a long time. Again, it happened when I was 11 years old, so that I was impressionable.
Well, right. You always hear like the jet engine doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel, and then like you actually look at,
but it weakens it,
and you're like, well, actually, it could weaken enough where if there's enough stress above it, 40 floors, that might just weaken it enough to make it fall. Shit like that. And then
again, going back to the practicality part of like
right.
So you did that to invade Afghanistan, so you could invade Iraq. Was like it didn't make sense. Like there wasn't the connection wasn't there. Now was there downfalls of intelligence that could have prevented it.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I mean, you look at
you know,
you look at 9/11. You look at October 7th in Israel and the intelligence around that event, and like
like
that.
some of these things may have been preventable, but that doesn't mean it was a conspiracy theory. That doesn't mean it was planned.
And there are conspiracy theories like about Israel, and like they allowed
Yeah.
October 7th to happen to basically allow them to start this war that they wanted. And it's like it's on both sides. Like there's like some weird stuff going on. I think that's just part of our time.
I could see that one. Again, I'm not buying into the October 11th conspiracy, but
Is it 7th or 11th?
7th, sorry.
I thought
it is 9/11 and
I
October.
thought it was 7, but
it is 7.
Okay.
It's October 7. I was just talking about 9/11, so
right. No,
you know,
fair enough.
Getting a little dyslexic there.
Yeah. It's been a long day.
But no, I could see it, yeah, being allowed to happen. I could see plausibility in that. Like there is the motive there, right? Israel has been looking for a long time to do the genocides, and they've kind of been doing it, just not
right. Seems like they've been like riding the edge,
yeah,
of what's illegal and what's not, and obviously international Amnesty, a couple other organizations have said that's not illegal, but they're getting away with it because they're tied to the U.S., whatever. And
so like the motives there, obviously the resources are there, the
number of people. I mean,
like if you're just going to let something, I mean, obviously there's been Hamas attacks against Israel for a long time.
Yeah,
you would just need a few people to be like, yeah, let's not escalate this intelligence to where it needs to be to prevent it.
Well,
that would
like
require a couple people, you know.
Or you just like the intelligence leaders that said that they received the reports were like, oh, we just didn't think it was possible.
Yeah,
right?
or like yeah, we didn't assume it was a credible threat type of thing, right?
Like same thing that happened with 9/11.
Exactly.
Right.
So that could happen, and the only thing that would really make October 7th a conspiracy versus just negligence is if somebody consciously made the effort to not address that threat, right? So if they legitimately thought it wasn't worthwhile to address it,
and that's their prerogative. It was obviously clearly wrong,
right? But people make mistakes, and that's not a conspiracy theory.
Right.
That's just like, oh, I don't believe that this is a credible threat we need to dedicate resources to when it was, versus I know this is a credible threat, and I'm going to allow it to continue anyway.
Right.
So we have justification to do the genocides, and
that's a different level of like the practicality is like very limited. Like you have to be very high up on like the chain of command to be in on that decision making process.
So that one passes all the checks. I'm not convinced that it happened because something passes all the plausibility checks, that just means it's plausible. It doesn't mean it's accurate. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's plausible.
Right.
That one, absolutely plausible.
It just means that like it truthfully deserves further investigation.
And I think
there has been
a
lot of investigation into like just sort of the like you said, negligence of the security apparatus. So like there's plenty that you could point to that extent.
So I will go to say that I'm not discounting that conspiracy at this point. I'm not going to go and say that it's definitely what happened.
No, it doesn't seem evident that that's clearly that's exactly what happened.
Right.
It's just like,
but it's certainly plausible. Anyway, but getting into conspiracy theories that did actually are real things that happened or almost happened. We've got quite a list, and one of my, I don't want to say favorite because it's not a good one.
well, none of them are. When's the last time you've had a good conspiracy theory?
The glitter one, I fucking love.
All right, I'll give you that one.
Unless watch now, it is being used for something really sinister, right?
Right, it's being used to like torture little kids or something like.
It's like the new waterboarding.
Right, it's glitter boarding. Right. We'll find out in 10 years.
Yeah. The new enhanced interrogation method
involving glitter.
Glitter cannon to the face.
Yeah.
But Operation Northwoods, because this sounds like one of those crazy fucking conspiracies. It
sounds normal, like Operation Northwoods. Like it sounds like it could be any military operation across time.
But this is Operation Northwoods is what 9/11 conspiracies talk about. Like if you were ever going to look at another conspiracy, and don't do this, do not justify or legitimize
Right.
any of these ridiculous conspiracies. But if you wanted to look to be like, is the government capable of pulling a terrorist attack to justify an invasion? That's exactly what Operation Northwoods was.
Right.
The CIA in the 1960s, JFK had recently been elected president, and we were not real good friends with the USSR, which surprise there.
Yeah.
And they were like building some missile silos in Cuba, and they were propping up Fidel Castro, and it was a little too close for comfort for us. And the CIA did CIA things, and first they did the Bay of Pigs,
Right.
which is where, like,
without JFK's approval, by the way.
without JFK's approval.
He would not give them approval, but they did it without military support from the U.S.
Yep. So the Bay of Pigs, for those who don't know, is they took a bunch of Cuban refugees
Yep.
and gave them a little bit of guns and
Right.
supplies.
Turned them into like really like militia militants.
Yeah. And then we're like, go take your country back.
Mhm.
And we're like, and the CIA is like, U.S. government has nothing to do with this. They're doing it all on their own. But like, really, we were like doing everything.
No,
and then,
yeah, the CIA asked for like what was it, like battleship, like air, like missile support and
Yeah.
like air support, whatever. Not like planes, but like
Right.
they asked for like artillery support, and whatever to like help the overthrow of the Cuban government.
Mm-hmm. And that didn't happen.
No, JFK was like, that's insane.
Yep. Not going to do that. Nuclear war is a thing we're trying to avoid at the moment.
Right.
And so the Cubans just got or the militant militia Cubans.
Yeah, the CIA group
got fucking slaughtered.
absolutely trashed.
And then they didn't do a super good job of covering up their tracks, so it became very apparent that this was a U.S. backed mission.
Right.
And people were mad about
Yeah,
it.
you could say that.
And so the CIA, undeterred, was like, if at first you don't succeed, so
Try again.
They came up with a new plan, and this new plan was Operation Northwoods, and they're like, we're just gonna attack ourselves. Maybe a military installation, maybe a civilian installation. We're gonna do a terror attack, and be like, Cuba did it. And
Right. Honestly, probably one of the first like professional false flag operation proposals. Because most of the like false flag stuff that happened was like actually just accidents. Like you look at
right.
like what was it, the Maine whatever that started the Spanish American War.
Right, yeah, remember the Maine?
Yeah, I remember the Maine. Like that was didn't really have anything to do with an actual attack.
And like the Lithuania that got us into World War One
actually did have military supplies on it, and like the Germans quasi had it at like an actual legitimate target in that ship.
Yep. Yeah, and Gulf of Tonkin as well. The thing that got us into the Vietnam War.
I think
was a false flag. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. I think it was a communication error to begin with.
Yeah, see, I don't really know anything about the Gulf of Tonkin, but finish Operation Northwoods. We'll get more into this stuff.
Operation Northwoods. They're like, yeah, we'll do a terrorism to ourselves and say Cuba did it, and then we can just invade. We don't have to like pretend that the Cubans are doing it again. And JFK is like, the fuck you will, like absolutely fucking not, because he had gotten so much backlash from the Bay of Pigs incident, which just happened like immediately after he took office.
Right.
But I mean, it landed on his desk. Had he been, Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan, he probably would have fucking signed off on it. It would have been a real thing that happened, and that's just fucking crazy to me, because it sounds like one of those batshit conspiracy theories, like, oh, the government was gonna like actually commit a terrorist attack on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens or U.S. military personnel to justify invading another country, and it's like that.
Right.
They had it all written down. Like
it's all in the name of national security, man. Don't you know? They're sacrificing for the greater good.
And I just want to say this is 100% real. It's declassified information. I'm not like, this isn't some Alex Jones bullshit. Like, this is a real thing that did happen or didn't happen, thankfully, but almost happened. And you can verify that yourself. I'm not making that up.
Yeah, and the good thing about the 60s, as fucked up as it was, and how many organizations between the FBI and the CIA had so much ability to make decisions without oversight, it's all basically declassified now.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much information out there for, like, COINTELPRO and with the FBI and what the CIA did to Latin America and South America. Like, it's insane. If you haven't looked into it, if you are just kind of progressive and you don't really know, like, the stuff America has done to the world and to our own citizens, there's a lot out there, and it's not good. And it never gets taught, because why would our teachers in high school and middle school teach us this stuff? It's
horrifying.
It's horrifying.
It is absolutely horrifying.
It's really, I mean, it should be a high school course, in my opinion.
It should
at least
be.
like a upper level high school course, and certainly, like, if you go to college for U.S. history, like, oh my God, how do you not teach this stuff all the time?
Yeah.
But, like, we are the bad guys in a lot of situations.
Yeah, we're definitely the baddies, you know. And like Star Wars, we are the Empire for
Right.
fucking sure. We are the Empire.
There's no doubt.
We like to think that Luke Skywalker would be on our side, but absolutely would not be.
He would be a revolutionary in, like, Peru or some shit like that.
But yeah, so the Gulf
Chile.
of Tonkin,
Sorry, Chile.
yeah, the Gulf of Tonkin, I started
The
talking
other 9/11.
about the other 9/11, that I started talking about there a little bit. It surprises me how few people know this, because this is again now a declassified thing. What got us involved in the war was supposedly the North Vietnamese attacked one of our ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, and it turned out, like, so it was a conspiracy theory false flag that just took advantage of a situation that happened. I don't remember the specific details, but there was a communication error where originally Washington thought that the ship was attacked. Like, legitimately, like, that was the communications they got.
It feels like some World War II shit. Like some Pearl Harbor. It was like, did they get bombed or did they not get bombed? You know, sort of thing.
And so, like, this news was kind of breaking, and then it came out that they didn't actually get attacked. But they're like, we've been looking for a reason to put boots on the ground in Vietnam, because we'd been there since the 50s. People do not realize Vietnam. I mean, some people realize it was like the war on terror before the war on terror. You know, we were there for a long fucking time.
Well,
but we were there.
It was a Cold War presence scenario.
Yeah, it was a Cold War proxy war, like every war, you know,
Right.
through since World War II, basically.
Up to, like, 2001.
But we'd been there in like a administrative capacity since the 50s, since like 1954. We'd been in Vietnam, and we were like looking for a reason, because it's like, why are we letting other people shoot people when we can go shoot the people? Like, we really like shooting people. It's our favorite thing to do, and blow them up. You know, we like doing that, and unfortunately, like, a lot of the people in our country aren't a big fan of it because it's expensive, and, you know, blowing up people is generally viewed as like a bad thing to do unless you're
not my favorite pastime.
Unless you're Henry Kissinger.
Right.
But no, so that was their excuse, and it was kind of like the weapons of mass destruction thing, except we actually made that one up, and this one, like, we were like confused for a minute, and they're like, yeah, we'll just keep being confused indefinitely so we can justify that. So yeah, and then fun fact on Vietnam too is we would have been out of it a lot sooner, because we had peace talks going. LBJ had peace talks going.
Wasn't the CIA or just the military apparatus, like, really pushing JFK to, like, fully invade Vietnam for, like, a really long time?
Yeah.
And he was, like, really against it. He's like, we don't need to be putting American citizens in Vietnam.
Yep.
And, like, that's part of, like, the JFK assassination, like, conspiracy, is that, like, he was so against the CIA and the military apparatus that they, like, had to take him out to, like, just keep pushing their agenda. And then LBJ was, like, a much more, like, very interventionist.
Oh yeah,
And
no.
it was like-
LBJ is like, we're not going into Vietnam. Then he gets elected, and he's like, fucking invade that shit.
Right.
Oh, I didn't get. Well, he did get elected after.
But when he took over for JFK,
right, yeah. But yeah, he was like, absolutely, let's fucking invade. But he was also in peace talks pretty early on that would have gotten us out of the war. I mean, we were
he'd put like tens of thousands, but not like a crap ton of people.
Yep. So we were in a position, which I think what his initial plan was to be like, full weight of the U.S. military is going to come in and use that as leverage to reconcile the situation in Vietnam. I assume
I haven't heard that take, but I would buy that maybe.
I'm postulating a little bit, but like it would seem no president wants to be in a long, drawn out military conflict, right?
I mean, unless you're Bush,
Yeah.
he basically purposefully created that scenario to create the situation where you.
His plan was, hey, we're gonna put boots on the ground, show the North Vietnamese that we are serious. We have a lot of big fucking sticks and can use them. Come to the negotiation table and let's have some peace talks. And that's what was happening. He was in peace negotiations. There was withdrawal plans for U.S. troops, and then Nixon sabotaged it. To
like in the pre-election process?
Yeah, in the pre-election process. Because Vietnam was wildly unpopular right from the beginning. Like nobody thought that we should be going there. We had
we just gotten over the Korean War.
Yeah.
It's like, and World War II. It's like, how many more wars do we need to be in?
Yep.
I mean, but that's me speaking
Yeah.
I prefer to be a non-interventionalist. And
also after we got there, it didn't go well right away. I mean, like Vietnam was a clusterfuck from day one.
yeah.
So it wasn't going well. Nobody really understood why we were there. You know, we came from World War II. That made a lot of sense for us. Like we got attacked.
I mean, there's the whole Red Scare thing, like the Viet Cong and just the communist North
Right,
North
like
Vietnam.
I get that from the containment policy aspect, but from a regular citizen standpoint, they had no fucking like Vietnam and a tie to Russia made no sense to most people, to your average layman.
I mean, except for McCarthyism was just so fucking popular and so pervasive in American culture. I would think that I don't know. I wasn't alive back then, so the fuck do I know?
Yeah. Either way, there was peace talks. Nixon worked on sabotaging those peace talks to hurt LBJ in the election. It worked, obviously, because Nixon became president. And after sabotaging the peace talks, it turned out to be a lot harder to unsabotage them. And we ended up there for quite a few more years.
It tends to happen when you start bombing a bunch of countries in that region, like Cambodia and shit like that. People don't. Means necessary, even if that means I'm gonna fund terrorists and like opium like fields in Iran or the Middle East. Like,
God, that was just that one was so crazy too, because like, so you know, his whole big thing was like, I don't negotiate with terrorists. I just sell them weapons, apparently, so that I can send the money from those weapons to other terrorists in South America because I happen to like those terrorists. And then also I'm going to sell drugs to our own citizens from that terrorist country to continue funding those terrorists. Like it was.
I gotta admit, I tried to find like research on us like selling crack and stuff to black communities to fund it, and
Yeah.
I found a lot of evidence that obviously like Iran-Contra was real, and that like we did like get drugs into like Latin America, and there was the potential for them to be brought into the United States,
Oh,
but like
they were absolutely brought into the United States. I don't know
but like
that
the actual apparatus that got them to be sold specifically to like black communities to like
I don't think
undermine that aspect,
I don't
like
think that
that's I
it
couldn't
necessarily
find
being
evidence
sold
to
to
that.
black communities was the was part of the plan. So what happened was um we were illegally, the CIA was illegally flying guns to the Contras
Right.
in like Honduras and shit.
Was
And
it Guatemala or
Nicaragua
Big
was where
Nicaragua? Yeah, Nicaragua.
the government they were trying to overthrow, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua.
Yes.
But the Contras were mostly based out of like Honduras and Chile.
Sure.
Because
Well, Chile not, because they're pretty far away from Honduras, but
yeah, that was one of their friendly countries that was aiding the Contras.
post the 9/11 of Chile.
Yeah. So
Sorry, bro. It just like if you have never heard of 9/11 for Chile,
Yeah.
like seriously, Google it. Like there's a whole fucking thing where the United States overthrew democratically elected government and politician in Chile because they were a progressive person.
which is why they were favorable to the Contras, who are fucking
Yes.
fascists, who were trying to overthrow the progressive communist Sandinistas in Nicaragua.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Like-
we did that a lot.
We did it all the fucking time.
It was like it was
all the
the
time.
CIA's favorite hobby.
Yeah,
just
it's
like
basically their main task
Yeah.
was to like
so throw a dart at a board and be like, let's prop up a dictator here. That seems like
Right.
And they weren't always successful. They weren't successful in Nicaragua, thankfully, but
they were eventually.
I mean, but yeah, not with the Contras anyway.
Right. Yes.
But so they were sending these guns. So the CIA was giving the Contras planes, and then filling those planes with guns, and they were flying them down to aroundish Nicaragua, so they
Right.
could go try to do their terrorism. And then they had empty planes, so they would load them up with cocaine, Colombian cocaine,
Sure.
and fly them back. And the CIA. A lot of it, the CIA was warehousing cocaine at military facilities for them. Like that is, I don't want to say absolutely true. A lot of this is, reports from like there. I forget his name off the top of my head, but there was a DEA agent who reported that this cocaine was being warehoused in military facilities under the direction of the DEA, and then nothing happened, and eventually he was kind of pushed out of the DEA. Like I don't think he got fired, but they made it very uncomfortable for him to remain employed there. But then they were flying in and out of military bases all the time, but they were also flying into commercial airports, and most of the customs agents were told that these particular planes, you do not inspect them.
Sure.
And so there was one main person, Danilo Brando, something like that, I think his name was. He was a Nicaraguan who was responsible for the Central American drug portion of this, taking the money and funneling it to the Contras. And then he was working with Rick Ross, who was a drug dealer, massive drug dealer in not the rapper Rick Ross.
No, I was like, the Rick Ross?
No, not he. I think he took his name from this notorious Freeway Rick Ross was what he was called.
I was like, let's go.
Yeah,
That's a conspiracy right there, baby.
Because the drug dealer Rick Ross, I'm pretty sure, sued rapper Rick Ross for like using his name. But drug dealer Rick Ross was then the one who was moving the product in L.A. for the most part. I mean, some of it still got sold in Miami and Texas and New York and stuff, but the main area was L.A. that it was really getting pushed. And how much the CIA, if this was more of a blind eye thing, or how much the CIA was involved in orchestrating that is really hard to say, because a lot of the documentation for the whole operation's been destroyed. But they were definitely aware of it. And Rick Ross got away with a lot of stuff that he wouldn't have had, you know, the CIA intervened, or seems like the CIA intervened quite a bit to make sure that he didn't get arrested. I mean, the dude was illiterate. He started selling drugs because he couldn't read or write. This was not some criminal mastermind, and he ran one of the biggest drug operations in U.S. history. He wasn't doing it because he was so good at it. He was doing it because he was kind of untouchable because the CIA was behind it, because that money was getting funneled back. So I don't think
it's plausible at the very minimum that the United States was eventually at some point providing cocaine to American citizens to be consumed via the CIA.
They were facilitating
Iran.
it at a bare minimum.
Right.
How much they were involved, if they were like, you guys kind of figure this out and we'll just cover your asses on it.
Right. And
or
certainly
if they were like, here's the plan ABC.
And certainly not, it seems like Reagan likely didn't have a ton of like personal information. Right. I think he was a little bit like he's basically, we've said this many times, but he's basically the pre-Donald Trump.
Oh my God, yeah, he was a fucking useful idiot.
He spent the least amount of time working as a president
until Donald
Trump. Like he spent like less than 8 hours a day working as a president, when like most presidents spend over 10 hours a day. And he basically like insulated himself from so many of the decision-making processes, at the very minimum publicly, but I think probably likely too. He left a lot of those decision-making to people who knew what his will was.
Right, and his will was absolutely, like, if Reagan had to sign off on this, if he didn't sign off on this, he absolutely would have.
Implicitly, certainly.
Oh, he loved the fucking Contras. Like, he literally called them, like, he compared them to our founding fathers.
Oh,
like,
shit. Yeah.
Like, he fucking loved them. So, like, he definitely had some influence in this.
So do you think Reagan was totally like new from like
I feel like he knew it was happening. I feel like I don't feel like he was a type of person. He's like a Donald Trump where he didn't want to know all the fucking details just because he's fucking mentally lazy and had dementia.
Sure.
But he wanted to know that the Contras were getting their money, and he's like, I know that you're gonna do some illegal shit to do this, and I'm gonna put the people in power who are willing to do that to get that done. So he was complicit in it. He put the pieces in place to allow that to happen, so it would happen. And then also with the funneling it into black communities, I think that was still a byproduct of Reagan's economic policies were fucking a train wreck, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could point to maybe like a short-term gain, but certainly not like a long term.
I'm not saying that he was super racist. He fucking hated the Browns, all of them.
Well, I mean, just look at his record in California. I'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. But so I think that his economic policy caused a lot of problems in the inner cities. Like a lot of the manufacturing jobs and stuff moved out of the out of city centers to more rural areas, and or overseas, because Reagan was big into shipping stuff out to where it could be made by children for 2 cents an hour. But that caused a lot of poverty in the inner cities. Obviously, with poverty, you get more crime, you get more drug use, stuff like that. So I think that the crack that he was now, warehousing in
importing,
it kind of filled that vacuum, because now there's a lot of money to be made selling drugs, and there's no other jobs to have. So that's what was kind of happening. And then it became an epidemic, and Reagan ignored it for as long as he could because he really liked ignoring epidemics.
Yeah, that's true.
AIDS.
Yeah, you might say that.
But finally, people were like, this is like a serious fucking problem. You need to do something about this, which was probably not the right thing. Never ask Reagan to fix a problem. He's only going to make it worse.
Say no.
And in that situation, he, I think, took the opportunity to really criminalize, because crack is more criminal than cocaine. They're the same fucking drug. Like, crack is theoretically less potent because it's just not pure cocaine. It's cut with like baking soda or baking powder or whatever. I don't know, baby powder. Who the fuck knows? I don't do drugs. I just drink a lot. But when he did that, so he created this problem. And again, I don't think it was like, this is the plan, we're going to import it and sell it to the poor black people
to make them look bad, or
right?
Like destroy the black community
but
necessarily.
it filled a void he created. So it was a problem he created by importing the drugs, filling a void from a problem he created with his horrible economic policies. And now he's like, cool, I've got a reason to put a bunch of black people in prison for the privatized prison system that I just did in 1984. So my rich
Or
friends have now
64.
slave labor.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I think that's a lot of times, like, conspiracies are a product of opportunity, not necessarily
Yeah.
a
Well, I mean, you could just say that
a
about
well-organized plan.
If you look at the history of the United States government in the 1900s, basically all the bad things that you could prescribe that are issues of our society today have happened on purpose and are existing today because we did it on purpose. Like, nothing that we're dealing with today is an accident, other than like maybe social media literacy, because that's technology based. It had nothing to do with humans prior to it existing.
No,
You know?
that is absolutely true.
Well, yeah. Sorry, we sort of took over with Iran Contra scandal.
There's such a big one because it keeps going.
It's so big. It's so big. If you haven't really looked too much into it, I recommend at least like trying to find somebody that can spend like an hour talking about it, because easily they can. It's like multiple hours sort of thing. I try to do it myself, and I still can't. Like,
there's so much, because even when you hit the Iran Contra part, the drugs part is almost always left out, like in the investigation and everything, because like people got convicted, and then Daddy Bush, who was the vice president who became president after Reagan, was also the leader of the CIA at one point, and definitely knew everything that was going on because he wrote about it in his diary. The man had a diary. He even called it a diary, not a journal, a fucking diary.
And how many of them got pardoned?
All of them.
Right. They all were like pardoned of all past crimes.
Ollie North got off on a technicality.
Yeah.
And then George Bush pardoned everybody as soon as he became president. Like, just like fucking pardons all around. And so, like,
I was just looking at Oliver North because I know that he has like since sort of like come back from his like interventionist tendencies, at least in Latin America. But like still like obviously was a huge part of like the fucking insane shit that we did down there.
And now it's so fucking weird because now he like runs the NRA.
Yeah, I can't get a take on that guy. He's like crazy CIA dude and like crazy military industrial complex, and then sort of comes back a little bit. He's like, actually, like that was kind of an issue. Like we didn't deserve to be, invading Grenada, and like shit like that was dumb. And now he's like in charge of the NRA, and it's like, yeah, like Second Amendment.
Also, like, it's crazy to me how like not concerned conservative institutions are worried about their image. Like, we should be taken seriously, and then they hire Ollie North as their like one of the most open. Like, we knew he was corrupt. It's public knowledge that he was one of the most corrupt people ever, like, around a president.
Yes,
and I don't know.
I mean, Henry Kissinger, I think, is probably the most.
He is,
corrupt.
But
and then Dick Cheney, obviously.
Oh my God,
up there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But neither of them like went to trial for any of it. Like,
well, that's because
Ollie North did go to trial.
Oh,
like, would have been convicted if he didn't get off on a technicality type of thing. And like, so like we know, like he went through the legal process. Like we talk about the corruption of Kissinger and Cheney, but like they were above it all. Like they didn't get to that level. He did, and they're like still like, yeah, but I mean now there's like, whether Donald Trump gets convicted or not, we'll fucking vote for him. It's the same fucking people. So, but they're the party of law and order. Don't forget.
Yeah, the party of law and order. But also, if Donald Trump shoots somebody on fucking Broadway Avenue in New York, I'm still gonna vote for him. But law and order.
Yep.
Anyways, let's look at some other things that are like very like actual conspiracies. Obviously you have Watergate. It's like the definition of Watergate is a conspiracy. Going back to the CIA and just briefly touching on MK Ultra, like very much a real thing that impacted the entire world.
So fucking ludicrous.
And like a bunch of Canadians we like.
Yeah,
did stuff too.
we
and
did it. So
experimented
it
on.
was a program. If you don't know, this one's another one you're gonna have to go do your own deep dive in. But in the 40s through the 60s, Cold War era, the CIA is like, I wonder if we can use drugs like LSD as like a truth serum
Well,
or
they
brainwashing.
were afraid that the Soviet Union had
Mhm.
found a way to use LSD to essentially brainwash people, and so they're like, "Well, we got to do it too,
Yeah.
or first.
Mhm.
So let's start a program that uses LSD to help us rewire a person's brain pathways, so we can control everything they do without them knowing about it. Essentially, creating a Manchurian candidate."
So LSD doesn't, in fact, do that.
No, kind of doesn't.
No.
Sort of does the opposite.
Yeah.
Actually.
It didn't work well. But they were doing this to people without telling them that they were doing it to these people.
Yeah, it's weird how they do shit like that.
And then, so they did it in America for a while, and then they're like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing this so close to home. So they're like, let's do it in Canada for a while. And they moved the whole program to Canada, and then they're like, it'd be a lot easier if we just did this in detention camps in third world countries nobody cares about.
Right.
And so they did it to people fucking everywhere, and it is just like they were drugging people and hypnotizing them and like subjecting them to all kinds of like stuff that they thought would brainwash them.
Didn't they actually start with like the leader of the CIA in like brothels in Europe, and they would like bring men into the brothels and they would dose them with LSD while they're in there with the
prostitute,
whatever, and they would like try to like make them they would like see how they react to LSD, and like they like trialed like pre.
And it was like, it was so non-scientific the way they went about it too. Like, it wasn't even like they were doing it without consent, which is a huge issue.
Yeah,
but then they're like, the way that they were doing it, they're just like, let's just give people LSD and see what happens. Like, there was no control. There was no scientific basis to what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they got there at some levels, but like certainly at the beginning, they were like, yeah, like let's just sit behind a one-way glass. I heard some story about like the leader, like the guy who was running the trial, sat on a toilet instead of a chair because he didn't want to have to get up to not watch the brothel
the dude
people
tripping out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's what he was watching, right?
Right.
Jesus fuck. Yeah. It's our government's definitely done some fucked up shit.
Weird fucking people. And that's the like I feel like that's like the white bread of conspiracies that we pulled off. Like the things that like really hurt is like the like Tuskegee experiments and all that shit we've done to black communities in the name of fucking
just fucking like the Tuskegee experiments made no sense. So if you don't know what these are, you should. It's an incredibly treatable STD today.
Yes.
It was not once upon a time.
But when we were experimenting on these people, it was treatable.
Yeah, so we'd gotten to where it was treatable, but this was really prevalent in the African American community in the Jim Crow South because they did not have they didn't have the education, they didn't have access to health resources, and things like that, and so they sent these doctors down there.
The U.S. government. Like, not even the CIA, not the FBI, just the literal U.S. government.
And they're like, hey, we'll treat your syphilis. That's a thing we can do now, and we'll do it for free. And so
then they proceeded to not.
No. Not only did they just not treat them, they gave them mercury. They injected them with mercury to just see what would happen. I guess, this is one of those things, like, this doesn't pass the motive test for me. Aside from just being fucking racist, like, why? What was the purpose of this? So these people, and syphilis, if you don't treat it, will literally make you go insane, like, and kill you eventually.
Yeah, it's very, very bad neurological symptoms.
So you lose your mind and then you die. And so they injected these people with mercury, which is not something you should put inside your body. And then which also makes you go insane. I think. It does. Mad Hatters, because they used to in making hats, mercury used to be like a main
Oh,
ingredient in making
okay.
hats, and that's where the whole Mad Hatter thing came from. Makes you go insane. I don't know. Maybe they're just like, hey, if we double up on the syphilis and the mercury, we can really get these people out of their fucking skull. I don't know what like the motive thing makes
I
no
think
sense to me.
I think
except
it
for
was just like testing. It's like a eugenics type thing. I think it was just them like testing out different shit and how people's systems will react. I think they at some point I think they essentially made the conditions of syphilis inert,
yeah.
but they didn't actually cure them, or they like lied to them, and so they basically made them come back in and just like give them experimental shit that was never going to actually help their syphilis.
Yeah.
Just to like see how the human body would react to really crazy shit that definitely it wasn't really actually good
Right.
for them in any way.
Yeah, it is just so
And that happened until like the early to mid 1900s.
Yeah.
Like I think it was like
I want to say it
1930.
was like going on in the 20s. I guess I don't remember
Yeah, like
exactly.
20s, 30s, like post World War One, pre World War Two, like that shit was going on like 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Yeah, it's so fucked, so fucked.
and then
And
you've got the COINTELPRO with like the FBI and wiretapping every like MLK. Hats off to his birthday here recently.
yeah,
Hack like wiretapping all his house and all his phone calls,
just
and like
blatant violations
blatant
of the
civil
Constitution of
civil
the
violations. And then potentially assassinating Malcolm X. If you looked into how Malcolm X died, it's pretty sketchy. It's basically on the same level as like JFK. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's weird.
It passes the plausibility
And
test. It's not confirmed. We don't know exactly like if they did it, but we do know that the CIA and the FBI spent a lot of time.
They spent a lot of time and money basically disrupting and taking out dissidents and anybody who was going to disrupt the capitalist control,
The status quo.
of our country.
All of the civil rights movement people.
Yeah, I mean the Black Panther Party, like especially, they were very much a nationalization movement and very socialist. And by the way, Martin Luther King, very much anti-capitalist, does not get talked about a lot, but he was very much a socialist. But that's just the part that gets left out all the time. Conveniently. But since we're talking about conspiracy theories, conveniently, it's not so conveniently when you consider our, economic system and who gets funding, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like the FBI fucked around and they didn't really find out. Nobody did anything to him. Herbert, Hoover.
Oh my God, Herbert Hoover. I mean, the dude was a fucking lunatic.
He was insane, but he got away with everything. He was like basically the most powerful politician in the 60s. He wasn't even a politician, but he was just like the most powerful, like you don't
public
fuck around
employee,
with him.
I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Like, he's just like, fuck we'll do anything he wanted to do. He just went and did. And how he had that much fucking power, I have no idea. But yeah, and so JFK, and that's part of where that conspiracy comes from, is JFK was the first president, I feel like, that was really trying to put the FBI and the CIA in check.
Oh yeah, like he was absolutely, I think as far as I can tell, he was very much like putting them on blast and being like, you guys have fucked up a lot. You fucked and you found out a lot in Latin America and around the world. And it's not my shit. I'm not gonna have it.
Nope. Like I'm not bearing the badge of your guys' fuck ups all the time. So no, I'm not approving this. I'm gonna start. And it wasn't even like he was like holding them accountable necessarily.
He just
didn't
didn't trust him. He didn't want to have. He didn't want to be reliant upon them for intelligence and decision making.
And he wanted to remove. Like I said, he wasn't holding them accountable. No heads were rolling. He's just like, you shouldn't have the power that you have to just do all of this illegal shit whenever you feel like it and get away with it. So I'm going to take some of that power away from you. And that's where they're like, yeah, that there definitely was some motive there. Herbert Hoover fucking hated JFK. hated him. So there's a little bit of plausible motive there for
if you're gonna talk about conspiracy theories, JFK, MLK, Malcolm X, obviously Fred Hampton's almost verifiable at this point. With the Black Panther Party, like it's almost undeniable in my opinion, at least to a certain extent, some of these actions against lawful American citizens who today are lauded as being like the most American people. And Martin Luther King, obviously, a fucking federal holiday.
Yeah.
But we probably murdered him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If nothing else, we created the conditions for him to get murdered.
Right. Like, there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, and I mean, so like the FBI was the QAnon of back in the day with with the civil rights movement, and anybody who, like, heaven forbid, you identified as a communist or a socialist, I
think we would be on their list.
Oh my God, we would have people. Communist gatherings like professors and stuff, because that's a lot of where that
they try to find like infiltrators and CIs and stuff. For like Fred Hampton, they said that like the leader of their like personal bodyguard unit was a FBI criminal informant and an infiltrator essentially, and potentially even drugged Fred Hampton on the night that the police raided their house and just fucking shot up like 10 people. The government does some fucked up shit, which is why I always hesitate to talk about this stuff, because, like, again, these are insanely interesting stories. They're stories that people should know and should hear about. They matter a lot, especially when you consider like all the arguments against like a socialist movement, and it's like, well, they've never done it. It's like, well,
because they get shot every fucking time,
freaking murdered,
or
their governments get overthrown.
Even back during the Woodrow Wilson presidency, which I mean, that wasn't even conspiracies. He's just like, crumpled up the Constitution and wiped his ass with it when we went to World War I, and he's like, you can't talk bad about the war movement and about the president, or I'll put you in jail. And he fucking did. Like, he did. Eugene Debs spent years in jail.
Right, because he ran his presidency from jail, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
His campaign?
And
or a portion of it?
And for those of you who don't know, Eugene Debs is the most successful socialist candidate in U.S. history. I mean, and that's, for presidency. And that's, I mean, we're saying like 1% of the vote, but that was huge at the time.
Right.
And he was literally put in jail because he's like, I don't think we should be doing World War I. Like, that doesn't seem like a thing we should be doing. And Woodrow Wilson, who horrible fucking president.
He had the only thing I would say that's redeemable is the League of Nations, but even in that, it's flawed in its inception. Not even just like the actual like implementation of it, but just like the idea. Like, you had like the right broad idea, but like to only limit it to a certain few nations and to obviously exclude like any part of the world that's not fucking white. Western Caucasian leading countries.
League of Nations was definitely his only redeemable quality. Otherwise, he was absolutely horrible. But yeah, he threw people in jail for questioning the government, because he didn't want World War I to look like an unpopular thing, and it was very, like, we were very isolationist at the time. We had no interest in getting involved in European affairs.
Right. I mean, you think about that's like the Teddy Roosevelt era of like we are America first.
Yep.
In like a weird way, and
so he to quell that, he went straight dictator on it. I mean, just like, you can't talk shit. I mean, he passed policy on it. Again, this is all stuff you can look up. This isn't like a conspiracy thing. He literally threw Eugene Debs and lots of other people in jail indefinitely without a trial, because if they went to trial, they would have been let go because they were violating their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. Because you can say, hey, I think the president's a dick and doing some bad things. Like, we're allowed to do that. The they wrote it down. It was the very first thing they wrote down was like,
Right.
you can say,
Or their constitutional right to a speedy and fair trial.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I got derailed on that a little bit, but it's just
No, but I mean, it's really. I think the point is that it's funny and easy to write off conspiracy theories sometimes, and a lot of them deserve to be that, right? Like a lot of them are just they make no sense whatsoever. It's really impossible to pull them off, and like it just doesn't seem like it would help anybody to do it. There's easier ways to do what you're thinking.
Well, and we were talking about this a little earlier. Is that the again another sort of conspiracy, but not really a conspiracy? Is that the government, the CIA, pushed the idea we have of conspiracy theories today to make their actual conspiracy theories seem ridiculous and people wouldn't believe them. So
like the term conspiracy theory was kind of coined to a certain extent around the 60s or the 70s when the CIA and the FBI commissioned the Warren report, Warren Commission, and they were like, nah, if you don't think this, then you're a conspiracy theorist and you're wrong.
And so they pushed that to delegitimize the people who were legitimately questioning. But then they also pushed they helped spread the narrative of a lot of really ridiculous conspiracy theories, including the moon landing being faked and aliens at Area 51. Like they have pushed these things, helped facilitate them, if nothing else. Not quash them, not provided like the very simple evidence required to prove them, so that it would delegitimize the people who actually spoke out against them. And this is where it gets dangerous, and this is why I've avoided talking about these things, is because when you do talk about these things, then it helps people rationalize or makes them feel like they have legitimacy to their like QAnon, child sex ring, Pizzagate
shit, yeah.
Like, oh well, if the government, possibly shot JFK and gave drugs to people around the world to give LSD to brainwash them and shit, why wouldn't they be doing this? And like, and that's harmful. Like that's harmful when that's doing exactly.
It's a really fine line because clearly the American government is not been a good guy.
No.
We've not been a good guy in many, many ways, but in a lot of ways that have been secretive.
Yeah.
So like in a way, we want to point that stuff out because it's important that we do it. Like these are huge liberties that are being violated, and it shows that our government can and should be better, and there are ways that we can make it better. But it also gives credence to some of these conspiracy theories that don't help people, regular people who are just
or
trying
hurt people. I mean, like in the case of Pizzagate, I mean, that guy tried to go into that pizza place and like shoot it up because he thought he was gonna save the children in the basement that didn't exist. Like these things are dangerous, and now you've got people convinced of this shit, who think that Democrats are drinking the blood of children for eternal youth.
They're filtering the adrenochrome out of their glands
because Hillary Clinton's aging so well.
She looks amazing.
Yeah,
right
I know. Definitely not a day over 20. That child blood really works.
At least 30.
Or like Sandy Hook was a false flag. Like that's a damaging narrative.
Hey, to be honest, like when I was in college, when that shit happened, like I was one of those people. Like I didn't like go out and like tell everybody, but like I was like listening to like people saying like, oh, like look at the shadows, look at the blah blah blah, and like it doesn't make sense how they'd be there that quickly or whatever, blah blah blah. Like anybody could fall into it at any time, and it can disrupt their lives. It can be harmful. For me, luckily, it was a learning experience, but like it can really damage, or lead to other bad things happening.
Absolutely. Or like the Holocaust deniers and shit like that, or global warming hox people. Like I mean, you think about the number of people who believe that may kill us all. You know what I mean?
We in 2050, we may be roasting weenies outside on a sunny day because that's how fucking hot it is.
And so like Like, it's very, very important. That's why I don't talk about these things hardly ever, is because I don't want to give credence to these ones that are genuinely damaging and are fucking ludicrous. Like, you are batshit crazy if you believe the Holocaust didn't happen, if you don't believe global warming is a real thing. If you know, you think
9/11 was
that,
an inside job.
right, if you think Pizzagate and QAnon, all that bullshit
Right.
is real, you don't believe that. And if you do, it's bad. You are, I'm not going to say you're a bad person, but you're doing things a bad person would do because you are genuinely hurting other
Right.
people by perpetuating these.
Well, and that's what sort of leads into like my last point is like if you know somebody who is like believes those things, like there are some things you can do. There's not a lot because
Mhm.
most of the time, the more evidence you provide to somebody in a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
the harder they push back against it. So
Mhm.
it is really tough to find that line, but there are some things you can do.
Mhm.
A couple of them being like not appealing to their emotionality of the event and
Mhm.
making them like feel like, oh, like 9/11 was terrible. Like, how could you
Mm-mm.
think that Americans would do this against themselves? Like, that's not going to help convince
No.
them at all.
No.
Basically, bringing humanity into that conversation doesn't help. Basically, really even kind of what we've done today is like
Mhm.
getting sucked into like the factual argumentation of the conspiracy.
Mhm.
That doesn't really help them because, like we said, the more facts that are provided against them sort of it reinforces they dig in even deeper.
Well, that's what I
Um,
noticed when I was talking to that flat Earth guy, and it was like everything, and it was fucking maddening because I'm like, they have an answer for everything. It's not usually a good answer, but they got one, and they will
right,
they will die on that hill. But anyway, yeah, continue.
right. Well, in really the biggest things we can do is focus on prevention and
Mhm.
help people really not get sucked into that, and that leads into why we started with media literacy last
Mhm.
week and pushing that first because it is sort of stopping like the first step to maybe
Mhm.
getting to a point where you believe in the conspiracy theory. Some of the best strategies, basically helping people recognize unreliable
Mhm.
information and
Mhm.
what sources are trustworthy and untrustworthy before they have gone all in
Yep.
on a particular topic. And like the last thing, the only thing we can really do, the best thing we can do is support education and media literacy analysis, putting people into that analytic mindset, helping them just sort of from the base get go evaluate, you know, if sources are fucking insane
Mhm.
or if if this is mainstream and it's being put on like the History Channel, like a lot of the stuff we've talked about as conspiracies, it's literally on YouTube as the History Channel. Like they put this shit out there.
Mhm.
Like it's a real thing.
I mean, the History
Um,
Channel's running shit like ancient aliens built the fucking pyramids and
right.
shit. Like,
But like they're a mainstream resource.
Mhm.
They're not like the New Americans
Mhm.
rebellion
You're
in
right.
fucking Nebraska.
Right.
You know, like
Mhm.
you can give a little bit more grace to the History Channel than you're gonna to those fucking
Right.
guys.
Mhm.
You know, so just it really comes down to media literacy
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and doing that as early as possible.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree, and just be careful like talking about this
Yeah.
stuff because conspiracy theories are a blast to talk about. I've had a great
Right.
time here doing this
Yeah.
episode, but there is real life ramifications to
Yes.
spreading harmful conspiracy theories, especially when they're misinformation.
Right.
And just be aware of it, guys. Be aware of it for yourself so you don't get, like we talked, both of us got sucked into ones that, looking back, we're like, that was kind of dumb.
Yeah.
But anybody can fall into it. Be Always be checking yourself. Always be
Yeah.
asking yourself, how and why would this happen? Ask yourself those questions. What's the motive? Do they have the resources? Do they have the is that the
Yeah. Motive, number of people,
yep.
resources required,
Uh,
and then practicality.
yep.
Is there an easier way
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish something that a
Mm-hmm.
conspiracy theory is trying to put out there?
So always ask your questions those first before you even entertain a conspiracy
Yeah.
theory. And then from there, just always take it with a grain of salt and always think about the repercussions of pushing something um if you're not very certain that this is accurate
Well,
information.
and in general, don't let it become your entire
No,
life.
absolutely not.
Like
Mm-hmm.
our when
There's
we
better
spend a
things
lot
out
of
there
time
in the
on
world to
stuff
do.
like this,
Uh-huh.
not conspiracy theories, but
Mhm.
like political talk,
Mhm.
because secret.
I
You didn't
have.
really let
I
we didn't
have.
really talk about this until a couple weeks
I have
ago.
because again, I really wanted to do it in the most responsible way possible.
Yeah.
And so I hope I've done that. I hope I've stressed that enough. These are a lot of fun to dig into. It's really crazy. It's really disturbing. A lot of them. But digging into them, just make sure you do it responsibly. And I appreciate you guys hanging out and letting us do this, giving us the opportunity to talk about this stuff.
That's
And
right.
pretend people are listening to it. And
Right.
and no, we love you guys. Once again, check out offjawagon.com for Let Them Eat Toast merch and
Yep.
my merch. You can follow me Offjawagon on any of the social platforms. Main one's TikTok. I post all the same stuff to YouTube. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube if you prefer doing that. Otherwise, we're obviously on all the channels which you've found if you've made it this far. So,
Right. And hopefully, we're hoping to get a Patreon up and running here this spring.
mm-hmm,
Hopefully sooner than later, get you some. We're trying to work on some membership content.
mm-hmm,
We're really unsure what that looks like.
yep.
We're hoping to do like maybe an AMA once a quarter or something like that. Maybe an episode where we bring on some guests, some Patreon members.
Yep.
So if you're interested in that, definitely
Let
hit
us
us in the
know. Let us know
comments.
things you'd be interested in
Yeah.
because we're here. We're doing this because you guys listen and are invested, and we want to do what you guys want us to do. So let us know in the comments. Like I said, you can comment on YouTube. You can message me. You can email me offjawagon@gmail.com.
Right. Message us. Let
Mhm.
them eat toast. TikTok.
TikTok,
Whatever.
you can message us there. Guests you'd like to see, or if you want to be a guest on the show and have something interesting worth talking about,
Yeah.
feel free to reach out to us. No promises, but we'll entertain talking about it anyway.
Yeah.
If there's topics you want to hear us talk about, let us know.
Yeah,
Again,
certainly.
we are here to provide content that
Yeah.
you guys want to listen to.
We're here for you guys.
Mhm. Thanks. We love y'all, and we will see you next week.
That's right. Take care.